I'm Luke Allen. I play bass guitar, youth group. I play at the Butler campus now too. Love doing that. Tonight's the only night one. Like you probably heard that a million times already tonight, but say it again. If you're confused, there's ice cream after. That's like the only reason I can't so. Sorry, I heard there was ice cream. Shelter Cold Stone. You guys are cool. Anyway, I can remember going to parties, just like I'm sure most of you have. Everyone was talking, having just like a great time, whatever, but slowly but surely, maybe you can relate to this. The conversation started going downhill, like more foul language was being used, explicit jokes were being told, dirty stories, like whatever, like teenage stuff. And here I was sitting in the middle of this, but like I was laughing at these jokes, I was spitting stuff back, like I was having a good time, you know. But eventually I was talking to someone and I don't even know what I was saying. Back in my head, I was just like, what the crap am I saying? Like, what on earth? Like this, I would never say this for my parents. Holy crap, my mom would like take a 2x4 in my face. Like none of that, not in my house. Like that's exactly what she would say. So we've been in a situation similar. The next couple of weeks, it's like kind of what we're talking about. Like this week, being real with God. Next week, being real with your friends. The seniors are doing that. Senior Di Maio. That's what they're calling it. I think that's cool. I don't even know. I'm told Paul Ross came with that name, but somebody said to say Terra, so I don't know what that's about. Okay, well, there's a debate, and I'm not going to talk about that. Tonight we're going to be in Psalms 23, focusing on what it means to be real with God. Open your Bibles to Psalms 23. I'll give you a second to open to that, because I hate when people like open it and then do whatever. But as you're opening to there, I'm just going to read the first couple verses. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. Psalms 23, 1 and 2. And usually when I read stuff like this, it's like in one ear straight out the other. That's like the stuff we gotta do in Awana, or like old people read at funerals and like weird stuff. Like I don't care. Sorry, old people. But like a lot of times when we're reading something in the Bible, we forget the context around it. There's context around things that we're reading. And sheep care would have been fairly common knowledge compared to now. The connotations or like the intentions of this chapter, I think, would have been much better understood than it is now, just because of like our society isn't like a farming society, very much sheep farming. So this chapter would have been much better understood. He makes me lie down in green pastures, and the funny, like weird thing about sheep is like just the way they are, the way that they're built, or the way they're wired. Like they don't lie down easily. I checked with all the internet sheep farmers that double check this. I mean, I just want to make sure this is true, so everybody I can find online, like this is true. According to sheep farmers, sheep will not lie down unless they are free of fear. They won't lie down if there's any pressing conflict within the flock. They will not lie down if flies or parasites are present, and they must be free of hunger. So this is to quickly prove that since they are lying down in the verse in green pastures, the shepherd's doing their job and meeting the flock's needs. Now that that's defined, we can look at the rest of that verse for a bit. Part 2 says, he leads me beside still waters, and surprisingly, sheep thrive in a dry, semi-arid climate. However, they still require water. Animals in the same climate, African gazelles, they're weird. Like they eat leaves and like get the moisture from the leaves, and they don't have to drink as much water. Like sheep are not like that. They have to drink water like the rest of us. Water is essential to their well-being. Sheep are dumb, but they can recognize in their head, they know when they're thirsty. They recognize this. But sometimes, instead of following the shepherd to good water, they set out on their own in search of their own water to satisfy the thirst. And on their own, they often find like dirty, nasty, contaminated, gross, just whatever water they find, and that leads to parasites and disease. When we look at the world we live in, people are searching for something, just like this sheep. We set out on our own. A lot of kids our age are looking for affirmation and acceptance and different things. Instead of looking to God, we set out on our own, and just like the sheep, we just do whatever we want. And oftentimes the shepherd will be en route to a good source of water for their flock, and the sheep will just stop and drink from the water they find in the path. To them, they're just getting a drink. Sure, they probably felt hydrated afterwards shortly, but little did they realize it was like crap and urine in that water from previous flocks on that path. The water's not just muddy, there's stuff in it. Water on trails such as that are often contaminated with, I did my research, nematodes and liver fluke eggs that will eventually riddle their entire bodies with internal parasites and diseases. Even more than that, most if not all of this doesn't take effect until later. A considerable amount of time will go by before the consequences of their actions takes place. We do these things because to us there's not any consequences, and it makes us like our lives seem better in the moment. Like at that party, like everybody was laughing and having a good time. That's cool. Like there's no consequences to that. But stuff like that and other things, that was just my example. Like there are consequences, and consequences that hurt relationship with God when we're not authentic or we don't take our relationship with God seriously. We're hurting ourselves and missing out on what God wants for us. The things I do now impact me for the rest of my life. The things you guys do matter. Not a lot of people realize this, or they do, and they just don't care. The point is, the world stuff's never going to fully satisfy you. You can't quench that thirst, maybe for a short period of time with some muddy water, but it's contaminated and it's just going to burn you in the end. Believe it or not, good looks don't last forever. Your friends are going to change. Man, I'm not friends with anybody that I was friends with 3 years ago. Some to none of us are going to play sports professionally. I'm sorry to tell you, sports people, you're not that good. You're going to graduate and never see your friends ever again. You ask your parents, are you friends with any of your high school people? Probably not, probably not, no. There's always going to be someone better than you, stronger than you, faster, more attractive, whatever. There's always somebody better. So I think when we go back to verse 1 that I read, it's going to show that God is something much better for us than what we define as important. But verse 1, I shall not want, or some translations say, I have what I need. And based on other stuff in the Bible, just to clarify, it's not saying I have what I need or I don't want because I'm rich and make it rain, I got everything I want. No, it's saying the sheep are so content because they know they will never lack the care and love of their good shepherd. That's why they don't want other insignificant lies or distractions that we tell. The shepherd provides, and they find contentment in their shepherd, and they know they're never going to need anything else as long as they have him. I'm not going to insult your guys' intelligence tonight. You know exactly what you personally struggle with. You know exactly what you're going through in your life personally, and you know if you're being authentic with God and with your friends and with everything. And being authentic is not a quality many people tend to naturally have. It's just human nature. We take the path of least resistance and the path of grace and instant gratification. In reality, we need a shepherd. Just like the sheep, there's no way for us to survive on our own. Don't try to be your own shepherd. Take all this into consideration because there's a point to this. Emotions. Look at the need of a sheep, the search for water, and all our similarities we have with sheep. We see that we have a reason to be authentic. It's no accident that David compared us to sheep with God as our shepherd. Being real with God first means knowing the authentic relationship God intended to have with you. Not just a relationship, but an authentic one. David paints this perfectly, in my opinion, in this chapter with the comparison between sheep and their shepherd. In a perfect world, once you've experienced the perfect shepherding of God, you're not going to want anything else because it just pales in comparison. But this isn't a perfect world, is it? Look around. So be real with God and let him shepherd you in your life. And that's all I have to say. And Julie's going to take the next couple verses.
That was really good, Luke. I'm Julia. I am a sophomore in high school. This is my first time speaking or doing anything in that case. So just bear with me here. But I'll be taking Psalms 23 verses 3 and 4 and just breaking that down a little bit. So I don't know how many of you guys have ever been to the Grand Canyon or just a hill or even the stairs, the bottom of the stairs and you're just looking up and you can't climb up, or it's just a lot easier to fall down the stairs, than to get back up. I fell down the stairs yesterday. It was a lot easier to fall than to get back up and go back up the stairs. But in short terms, it's just a lot easier to fall down than to get back up. So Psalms 23, 3 and 4 says, He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. So I'm going to spend more time in the second verse first, and then I'll get back to the third one. So when David walked through the valley of the shadow of death, it was hopeless. I don't know if any of you guys have ever felt hopeless, you just lost your big game, you lost a bet, you feel like a failure in life, just everything's going wrong, and you feel like there's no hope and no way that you can get out of it. But there is, and it took me a long time to realize that. I know I moved almost last June, so almost a year ago, and it was really, really hard just to say bye to everyone and to really get through everything. And there were times where I would just be hopeless, and there was no way that God could take me out of this, and what is God doing in my life? I didn't see any action or grace or anything. So it was just really hard, and I don't know if any of you guys have experienced it or not, but it's just a really terrible feeling to think that there's no hope for you. But in verse 4 it says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. I thought that it was really cool that David said, valley of the shadow of death, because I dug a little bit deeper into it, and to have a shadow, you have to have light. So even though you might be in the shadow of death, you might be in the darkness of death, there's still light surrounding it, which is where God works. And I just thought that was really, really good, because no matter what you go through, God will be there for you. And in verse 3 it says, he restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And that, it doesn't matter how hard your life gets and how hopeless, ups and downs, whatever's going on in your personal life, God does provide. He does find a way out for you. And everything might not always turn out like gumdrops and rainbows, but you can always find comfort in knowing that He's with you in everything that you do. And no matter how far away you stray from God, there's always a path back to Him. And I know when you're feeling hopeless or insecure or anything like that, you can, you put on this face that, oh, I have to be perfect in front of all of my friends and my family, my church, because, you go through this total 180 flip of who you are. And so you feel like you have to meet everyone's expectations of who you are as an athlete, as a person, a friend, a daughter, son, sibling. And the truth is that you don't have to pretend. And if you figure out who you are now in Christ and everyone else that is surrounding you, if you are your own person and you know your identity and you don't put on this mask, it'll be so much easier to find God in everything. And it's really hard to say just find God and everything will be okay. But He does help through everything. And yeah, so it doesn't matter how hard life gets, God will be there for you.
That was really good. I can relate. So if you haven't noticed, we're practicing all the verses, and I get the last two in Psalms 23. But I wanted to give a little context behind David's story. He actually wrote Psalm 23 towards the end of his life, and David went through a lot. So if you want to start kind of at the beginning, Saul was currently the king of Israel, and usually with kingship, it gets passed down to their son or a nephew or someone in the family. But Saul wasn't doing what was right, and God said, your family's not going to be a king anymore. So He told Samuel, one of the judges that God would talk to, and said, Samuel, go to the house of Jesse, and one of his sons is going to be the next king, and I want you to anoint him. So Samuel went to Jesse's house, and Jesse said he lined up all of his sons, and Samuel went through all his sons, and none of them were what God said. So Samuel's probably freaking out, saying, Jesse, do you have anyone else? Like, none of these kids are going to be the next king. And he said, oh yeah, I have, some or little kid, and shepherding all the sheep. I didn't really think you would want him. But Samuel said, go get him. I want to see him. So sure enough, David was the king. Well, not king, but he got anointed to be the king. But there was one point where he had to run, because of course, as soon as Saul found out that, hey, this dude's going to try to take over my whole family and become king of Israel, I should probably kill him. So don't have to deal with that. So he had to run and hide for his whole part of his life. And he probably felt hopeless. He probably felt doubt, confused, didn't really understand. God, why would you tell me I was going to be king and now I'm hiding in a cave? And all of Saul's army is trying to find me and kill me. So this is what he writes. I mean, not during the cave, but he does write this in the last 2 verses of Psalms 23. He says, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all of the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So David trusted God. He didn't choose to trust God in the cave, because if he didn't, there was hopelessness. How would he get through that? And also, I think it's important to realize that David trusted God because he knew God. And if you don't know God, you can't trust God. But I'll get back to that. Part of my story is not a big deal, but it was to me. I love swimming, as some of you know. I've been swimming since I was 7, and I thought I wanted to pursue it professionally. And in 9th grade, I had a great season for Butler, and I was really excited for my summer season. And the first 2 weeks, I did pretty well, but during one of the meets in the middle of the season, I came off the blocks too hard, or started, if you don't know what that looks like in swimming. And as soon as I hit the water, the doctors thought I dislocated my rib, which was not fun, but it was no big deal. They just said, rest, take the rest of the season off. It was only 2 or 3 weeks, it wasn't a big deal. And I was ready to hit it back my sophomore year, try to go to state, really excited. And I got back in the pool, and at first I thought, okay, well, this feels good, it's gonna be great. And my injury came back, and no one knew what was wrong. I went to all kinds of doctors, physical therapy, MRIs, arthrograms, everything. No one knew what was wrong. And even if you fast forward to now, and my sophomore season has passed, I swim 1 meet, I swim maybe 3 practices, and still no one knows what's wrong. So I'm not like David was when he was writing this song, but I can feel hopeless. I can feel doubtful. I don't understand what his God is doing. I'm confused, but I still have to make that decision to trust God, because that is the only thing that fills the hopelessness. So these 2 nights were supposed to be about vulnerability. So vulnerable with God was our night, and then the seniors were going to take vulnerable with friends or people. And I was thinking about, how do we be vulnerable with God? It doesn't really make sense. So I looked up the definition of vulnerable, and it said susceptible to physical or emotional attack or harm. So when you think of that word, I don't think of God. Oh yeah, attack and harm, that's God. I don't think of that. So another word came to my mind, and it was surrender. And the definition is give up or hand over a person, right, or possession. So I think part of being vulnerable with God is being able to say, God, I'm worried about this. I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I don't understand what is going on, but I'm going to surrender it to you and give it to you. And I think that's really important, because a lot of the times when we are anxious, or when we're depressed, or when we don't have control over something, which that's when I get most anxious, we have this illusion in our heads that we have a little bit of control. By hanging on to what we're worried about, we don't want to give it to God. Now that doesn't make sense, but in my life, that's what I like to do. I like to hang on to what I'm worried about. I want to worry about it, which is, I don't, but in a way I do, if you know what I mean, kind of. But anyway, I think it's really important because God can take that. God can give us peace. And you would wonder why would I want to give this away to God? Like, what is that going to fill any of the hopelessness that I feel? And I like to look at it like this. So picture a person that you trust. It could be your mom, your dad, your grandparents, relatives, friends. And if you were in a dangerous situation, so, I don't know, let's pick the classic movie, you're tied to railroad tracks. And that person looks you in the face that you trust and says, I'm going to get you out of this. I'm going to go and get supplies or whatever I need, and I'm going to get you out of this situation. And then now, so you have that picture. Picture someone you've never ever seen before saying those things to you. Who would you trust to get you out of that situation? Hopefully the person that you know. And also on that thought, who would you be less anxious with? So if someone you really trusted said, I'm going to get you out of this, yeah, you might be nervous, like, hey, there's a train coming soon, I don't know when, hurry up and get back and save me out of this. But if you didn't know someone, you have no idea if they're going to come back for you. I mean, you could hope, but it doesn't really seem hopeful. So the bottom line is, if you don't trust God, if you don't know God, you won't be able to trust Him. You know that person. You built a relationship with that person that's you trust. I mean, that's how you get to trust someone. So you can't just say, oh, God, like, why am I in this situation? Why? I tried trusting you. Did you really try to trust Him? Did you really get to know His character? Did you get to know what He said to you? Do you know His promises? Like, He will give you rest. Like, do you know those things? Because if you don't, it'd be hard for me to trust someone that says, oh yeah, I'm sure somewhere in there I'll save you. Like, that doesn't make sense. So, I guess what I'm trying to say, the bottom line here is, if you surrender your anxieties to God, you will receive a non-circumstantial peace. Do you think? So if you are in the midst of your life, the midst of the cave, where you're in this storm and you don't understand what's going on, and you have peace, that makes no sense, but God can do that. So I just think that is really important to remember. And you might be sitting here thinking, well, I don't really know God, but I prayed when I was little, and I said I was a Christian. It's not mean, oh yeah, you're not a Christian if you don't feel this way. I think a lot of us cannot realize how weak or strong we are in our faith until we hit the storm. But if you haven't accepted Christ and you are worried about something, or even if you're not, we would all love to talk. There's several adults here, but I just want you to think about that. If you can't trust God if you don't know God. But yeah, that is all I have. So I think the band's going to close us out with one more verse, one more song, and then I'll pray while you guys get up here. Dear God, I thank you for this day and the nice weather. I just pray that you would speak to each and every person here and let them know, God, that you can take their anxieties and their depression and whatever they're going through. I just pray that you would bless our time together as we have ice cream and all kinds of fun. And I pray that you'd be with us throughout our week and we would just feel united. In your heavenly name we pray. Amen.